Hello, it's John here with our second batch of League One fixtures. So we're going to be looking at, and we're going to start off with Bolton Wanderers, and we start off with their away at first. Leyton Orient versus Bolton. That's the League One game. Bolton versus Wrexham, rather an unknown game that one. Charlton Bolton, and then Bolton Exeter. I think that's a nice, a decent little mix there. So they don't start too badly. In August, in September, it's Cambridge United versus Bolton. Bolton versus Huddersfield, probably one of their first tough games that they've got. And then Bolton versus Reading, another game that could be quite difficult this year. And Crawley Bolton to end September with. A bit of a mix, I suppose, again. Going into October, we have Northampton Bolton, Bolton Shrewsbury, Stevenage Bolton, maybe a sticky wicket there. Bolton, Burton, Birmingham Burton. God, Birmingham Bolton, sorry. I just said Burton. And Bolton Peterborough. So Birmingham and Peterborough, away and home, in the latter end of October. So that's going to be an end of October to be careful of. Especially as on November we start off with Stockport versus Bolton. And we don't know what they're going to be playing like next year. They've not played them before last year. So, well, don't play them last year as they got promoted. And it goes to Rotherham Bolton and then Bolton Blackpool. So, again, ending the month with a toughie. And then going into December, the Christmas period, we have Bolton Mansfield, Bristol Rovers Bolton, Bolton Wigan, Wycombe Bolton, Bolton Barnsley and Bolton Lincoln. So there's a few sticky ones there, a couple of sticky ones and a couple of quite possibly tough ones. Christmas isn't too great for Bolton. Could be harder, could be tougher, could be easier though. Going into New Year, into January, we got Mansfield versus Bolton, Exeter Bolton, so we don't start off too badly. And then Bolton Charlton, Bolton Cambridge, Huddersfield Bolton, and then Bolton Northampton. That's a nice mix, I think. That's a nice mix of League One style and possibly Championship class teams. But we start off February with Reading Bolton, Bolton Crawley, Shrewsbury Bolton, and Bolton Leyton Orient. So actually, I'd say that's a nice month for them. I think they've got one good month where they should be able to, especially a team the class of Bolton, be able to pull back and start to show what they can do. Going into March, you start with an unknown: Wrexham Bolton, Bolton Birmingham, Burton Bolton. Why is it when I say Burton I always get it wrong? Bolton versus Stockport, Bolton Rotherham, and Blackpool Bolton. So that's 1, 2, 3. It's quite a tough. That's actually quite a tough month, March. So let's see how they end. Because if they have a tough March, then surely we should be getting a nice mix towards the end. And the last but 1 month, April, is Wigan Bolton, Bolton Bristol Rovers, Barnsley Bolton, Bolton Wycombe, Lincoln Bolton, Peterborough Bolton. That's actually quite a tough month, isn't it? And then they end with Bolton Stevenage. So it's, on the whole, it's a nice mix. There's a couple of months there that are a little bit tougher than probably they would like altogether. But I think on the whole they've got a decent fixture list there. I think that's something that they can work with and something that they can try and create a squad that can attack those tougher games all in one go, that where they have 2 or 3 together and be able to sort of pull back and let some of their injured players recoup a little bit during the season as well. So I think on the whole, I quite like that one. I think Bolton have a relatively decent spread of fixtures there. So let's continue with Bristol Rovers, and Bristol Rovers start their campaign at home against Northampton Town. They go straight into Rotherham, so it's Rotherham Bristol Rovers, Stockport County Bristol Rovers, and then Bristol Rovers versus Cambridge. So I think they'd be relatively happy with that. So they've got the chance of starting quite well. Going into September, we have Barnsley Bristol Rovers Wigan. Yeah, okay, a little bit difficult there. Peterborough Bristol Rovers and Bristol Rovers Wickham. So there's a chance that they may find September a little bit tougher. Bristol Rovers Charlton starting off hard in October. Burton Bristol Rovers Blackpool, Huddersfield Bristol Rovers, and then the last 2 games of October are Bristol Rovers Shrewsbury and Reading Bristol Rovers. I would say that's not a bad mix if you're trying to be if you're trying to get into that middle section. I think that's probably a decent mix for them. Bristol Rovers versus Lincoln to start November with, and then Bristol Rovers Crawley, and then we end November short month with the Mansfield versus Bristol Rovers. Moving into the Christmas month of December, we start with Leyton Orient versus Bristol Rovers Bolton, a tough one. Birmingham Bristol Rovers, another tough one. Bristol Rovers Wrexham, the unknown, of course. And then we go for Exeter Bristol Rovers on Boxing Day, and we finish the year on Stevenage versus Bristol Rovers. I think actually that's not a bad December. Let's have a look. 4 of their 6 games are away, so it's a little bit difficult for the fans. The fans are going to be travelling a hell of a lot during December, but I think on the whole that's not a bad December. January, they start January the 1st with Bristol Rovers versus Leyton Orient. With those away games, they had to come up with a home game somewhere. Cambridge Bristol Rovers Stockport, Bristol Rovers Barnsley, Wigan versus Bristol Rovers, and Charlton versus Bristol Rovers. So 3 tougher games than they would have liked altogether, but I think that's after a good December that you would expect some fluctuation in the class of opponent. So you go into February, and it starts with a toughie with Bristol Rovers versus Peterborough and continues with Wickham versus Bristol Rovers, and then ends with Bristol Rovers versus Burton and Northampton Bristol Rovers. A nice mix. Going on to March, start with a toughie, Bristol Rovers versus Rotherham, Shrewsbury Bristol Rovers Huddersfield, a difficult one, a possibly sticky wicket of Lincoln versus Bristol Rovers, Crawley Bristol Rovers, and Bristol Rovers Mansfield. I think on the whole they would be happy with that. I think if you were a Bristol Rovers fan, you'd be quite happy. I think with March. April, big month. There's only 1 game after April, so April's essential that for any team to be able to push on and get the maximum out of that season. They have Bristol Rovers Birmingham, ouch. Bolton versus Bristol Rovers, too many B's in there. Bristol Rovers Exeter, Wrexham Bristol Rovers Stevenage, and then Bristol Rovers Reading. So we've got a few that may cause a bit of a sticky wicket, but they're just good League One class teams. So it's going to be interesting to see how that last month pans out. And then they end the season, I suppose, with a quite a tough one. It's Blackpool versus Bristol Rovers. So on the whole, one of the better spreads, I would say. That has to be a really well spread set of fixtures. December for them, it appears to be nice and relaxed. However, most of them are away from home. No, on the whole, that out so far out of the first two videos, that's probably the ease, most well spread of all the fixtures so far. So let's continue now with Burton Albion. Burton Albion start with a, well, I say this is a sticky wicket one. This is the team that did really well at the end of last season, and they seem to be not doing too badly so far with what they're trying to bring in. Burton versus Lincoln City. So we're going on with Burton. Burton versus Lincoln City. Mansfield Town versus Burton. Burton versus Stevenage, and Northampton versus Burton. That has to be, I would say that's a decent opener. That's getting a couple of those mid-table, upper mid-table teams out of the way, together with a nice chunk of League One clubs. We go in September, and it's Burton versus Crawley, Rotherham versus Burton, followed by Burton versus Barnsley, and then Blackpool versus Burton to end September. So September's a little bit more tough. Added to the fact that Crawley, we don't know how they're going to play when they get up into League One. So this could be quite an interesting month for Burton. September could be reasonable, or it could be an absolute disaster. We go into October and we carry on that tough period with Reading versus Burton, and Burton versus Bristol Rovers, Burton Charlton, Bolton Wanderers versus Burton, Burton versus Wycombe, and Cambridge United versus Burton. Now that's actually quite a tough run. That is actually, it is spread with one or two decently League One style teams. They could recoup quite well, and they could just get the odd points, the odd win in there, to just make it that the team doesn't drop that momentum too much. I think that September and October is going to be quite tough, which means as we go into November, there must be some easier runs coming in. Burton versus Shrewsbury, Wigan versus Burton, and Burton versus Stockport. So yeah, there's only the toughest one there would be, you would expect to be Wigan versus Burton. We go into December, and the midpoint, they start December with Peterborough versus Burton, Burton Wrexham, Leyton Orient Burton, Burton Exeter, and Birmingham Burton on the 26th of December, and Huddersfield Burton to end the year with. So that's actually quite a tough month. December is the only one. There's two, I suppose. Yeah, it's reasonable, but there's three really obviously quite difficult teams to play there. Now you go into January, and it tries to flip things round. Burton versus Peterborough, Burton Northampton, Stevenage Burton, Crawley Burton, Burton Rotherham, Burton Reading. I say that's probably a decent mix, really. Slightly on the hard side. Barnsley Burton for February starters, Burton Blackpool, Bristol Rovers Burton, Lincoln Burton. So probably a 50-50 spread there. In March, you've got Burton Mansfield, Wycombe Burton, Burton Bolton, Shrewsbury Burton, Burton Wigan, and Stockport Burton. So that's actually that's one of another team with a March that's possibly quite I don't want to say easy, but it's one of their easier months. And then we end with April. Okay. Well, that the EFL website went down there. We go into April. April Fool's Day, Burton Leyton Orient, Wrexham Burton, Burton Huddersfield, Exeter Burton, Burton Birmingham, and finish with Burton Cambridge United. Not a bad mix, I don't think. That's not it doesn't stop them dead for several games in a row. I think it's a decent a decent April for them. And then Charlton versus Burton. Charlton could be a tough game next year. It depends what they whether they get the teams that the players that they're trying to get in over the recruitment period. So I think Burton have a reasonably well spread set of fixtures there. I think they're one of the lucky ones that don't get hit by masses of tough teams all in one for about 6 or 7 games, because that can hit the mental side of things, and teams can get very dejected and start going on these 6-7 runs without a point, and that for the fans is not a very nice thing to have to go through. So that's the second video. Please like and subscribe. You'll get lots more content like this. You'll also get the live streams on a Saturday, and if you hit the bell, you'll be notified when I'm online to do my watch-alongs. So please like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And I'll see you again with the video number 3.